Erratic and damaging weather in major cropping areas of the world are shaping up to send wheat supplies dwindling and prices high. But in great news for Australian wheat growers, ideal conditions for this season are brewing, and a big harvest is expected down under. Large grain producing areas such as the Pacific Northwest and California in the States are experiencing prolonged drought and hot weather. Other large producing areas across Central Asia, including Iran and Kazakhstan, are also experiencing rare drought events. Western European growers have also been impacted by floods as harvest approaches, which isn't the ideal time for heavy rain to arrive. This follows a difficult grain season in both South America and Russia, as well as some bulk buying of wheat across the world in response to the global pandemic last year. As a result, grain futures prices recently spiked to 6-year highs, peaking above $700 US earlier in July. Despite these supply shortages, the winter crop in the Ukraine looks to be above average, which will alleviate some of the pressure on wheat markets coming into the Australian harvest this summer. It has been an ideal start to the growing season for Australian producers across the major cropping regions. A negative Indian Ocean dipole event has been officially declared, and the ENSO indicator is beginning to tilt towards a La Nina event in the Pacific to develop over springtime. This will generally result in higher than average rainfall across the eastern seaboard during the growing season. Following an average summer crop in southern Queensland and northern New South Wales, they are set for a big harvest over winter after substantial rainfall through the wet season, breaking the back of a multi-year drought event, and rainfall on or west of the Great Divide is helping to refill northern Murray-Darling storage reservoirs. In fact, there is some concern for chickpeas and other crops susceptible to waterlogging, as well as limited ability for farmers to spray for disease in between wet events. The story is similar further south in New South Wales Central West and the Riverina regions, who experienced drought-breaking rain in 2020 and strong harvests last season. Renewed rainfall in 2021 is particularly significant for the Riverina, where rice production dwindled significantly, and several industry figures have stated that Australia cannot produce enough rice to satisfy domestic demand currently. Projected rainfall for late winter and spring is high, which should bode well for the winter crop, but an increasing water allocation, thanks to the southern Murray-Darling Basin storages filling over winter, will allow many producers to follow up the winter season with a summer crop, drastically boosting supply and providing a financial boon for producers. Victoria's Wimmera region enjoyed very favourable conditions during 2020, with strong autumn breaks and spring rain together with a settled harvest period over December and January. It looked much drier this autumn, however early winter rain and cooler temperatures over summer preserved soil moisture and rewarded farmers who dry sowed. Predictions for above average winter and spring rain has led forecasters to believe another big harvest is around the corner come summertime. Further northwest in the Mallee, the situation was more tenuous, with many farms missing the autumn and early winter rainfall. However, concern has abated somewhat with July rainfall relieving the dry fields, and with regular follow-up rain potentially on the way, it seems the season has been saved. Over on the South Australian side of the border, the story is similar. A late break has given producers the moisture needed to establish crops in both the South Australian Mallee and the Eyre Peninsula regions, but development of crops is a little bit behind schedule currently. The vast plains of WA are perhaps showing the most promise so far. Excellent autumn rains in the Wheatbelt and Geraldton Port regions have sent tonnage estimates soaring, with subsoil moisture almost fully recovered. However, further south, the volume of rain has in fact proved too much, with tonnage estimates revised down in Albany and Esperance, in a sad twist after a number of particularly dry seasons in the recent decade. While the negative IOD and potential La Nina will almost certainly bring rain to the east, Western Australia is generally not impacted by such oscillators. Therefore, the rainfall forecast for the remainder of the winter season is not quite as positive, but given the rain that they have already had, not as much follow-up is required. All regions are of course still at risk of frost as well, particularly in the Western Australian and Northern Victoria regions, so estimates may yet fail to materialise. It seems almost the entire cropping region of Australia is looking at a strong harvest for grain in particular, in a climate of high prices, although typically prices will come down as Australia's harvest begins. Some risk remains for crops including frost and later damaging harvest rains, as was the case in 2011. However, the news has only been good for Australian farmers so far as we come out of July, with nearly half the season behind us already, depending on your region. Hopefully, the current tonnage estimates do play out, and the ability for harvest workers to cross state borders is not impacted by lockdowns or restrictions at harvest time. The horticulture industry was particularly impacted by these restrictions, as well as very limited numbers of foreign workers entering the country. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for further updates about economics, politics, and agriculture. My name's Max. See you later.